The following audio recording has been designed for learning purposes only. Do not share, distribute, or provide any type of copies, or this audio lesson will not be made available to you. Good luck with today's lesson.
Switch that terminology. But starting today, we want to focus on the actual hardware that's running that data. So we had left off on this presentation here, and I will put this presentation out in Canvas when I'm done, so it'll be out there. We left off right here. And then as far as printing goes, you guys, that's the last one. I gotta have quiet for lecture now. You can get it at the end though if you need to. So processing hardware. This is not on your study guide. You don't have to know this necessarily, but it's a background or an introduction to this portion of this presentation. So integrated circuits are a super thin slice of semiconducting material packed with microscopic circuit elements such as wires, transistors, capacitors, logic gates, and resistors. The bits that we learned about, binary digits, zeros and ones, are represented as electrical pulses that travel over these circuits. So if you took an electricity class, a class on electricity, you got wires, transistors, capacitors, logic gates, resistors. Those are all electronic technology. So it's an electronic machine, of course. You guys, we got to have this stop, man. I'm gonna have to shut this off, okay? Can't have it going. This is also called a chip, microchip, and computer chip. Integrated circuits are used for the processors, the memory, and the support circuitry in the machine. This is together called the chip package. So some of these terms that you might have heard before, we're just trying to kind of, put some understanding to them. This is again not going to show up on your quiz. I'm just trying to give you some background knowledge for these next few slides. Your main circuit board is your motherboard. So there's a main board in the machine, and as time progresses, there used to be a lot of add-ins. So they have like an electronic board, and then they're like, oh, we can add this component, and this component. And as time progresses, they build more and more into the actual board itself. So things are changing. This is an old picture. Getting to what we need to know for the quiz here, question number 8 says, what does the acronym CPU stand for, and what's the purpose of a CPU?
CPU is Central Processing Unit.
Central Processing Unit, exactly. So Central Processing Unit. And the simple layman's term way to describe that is it's the brain of the computer. So that's the first bullet I have up there. If you want to break it down into more detail, what does the brain do? It processes instructions just like your own brain does. So we saw the motherboard there, and there's components on the motherboard, and it's the largest chip on the motherboard. Today, efficiency is something that is taken into account when computers are designed. We talked about this a little bit the other day. Efficiency versus performance is something that they have to balance out when they're designing computers for the supply and demand. What do people want? Well, they wanted mainly just performance before. It's like a muscle car, I think I might have mentioned. So muscle computer, essentially, they wanted more and more performance. And then all of a sudden, it's like, wait a second, this is draining our battery life on portable devices. So they had to start coming up with something that was also efficient to maintain a lengthy battery life without having to recharge. So it's a balancing act now between performance and efficiency. Intel, the company Intel, is the world's largest chip maker. A few years back, they came out with this denotation for their CPUs, Core i3 through 7, and they've extended that to 9 now. So it's like Core i3 through 9. These are what are considered high-end processors. Now the funny thing about this is they used to come out with names, and then those names became obsolete. And what they've done now is they kind of just say, it's just a generation now, exactly. So They still call it Core i3 through 7. You know, it's 3, 5, 7, and actually 9 now. And the most recent one that's come out is Coffee Lake, which is considered the 8th/9th generation. It came out in 2018. I can't remember exactly what month, but it was somewhere. Do you remember?
Well, I know it was definitely before. It was definitely before September of last year. 'Cause
I think
that's
so
when
too.
That's when I got mine, and it had the 9th generation.
Yeah, and I taught this class, and we talked about Coffee Lake in September. So, and it was already out. So you're probably right. It's sometime before that. So instead of renaming this all the time, they keep these the same, but they come out with a new generation, and sometimes they'll just refer to it as the generation, or sometimes they'll actually say the name, which is Coffee Lake, and the one before that was Kaby Lake, K-A-B-Y. Processors can come in dual core, quad core, octa-core. What does that mean? Well, there's 2 processors in the core if it's dual core. Quad is 4, octa is 8. So that just gives it more chances. Remember, it's a brain that's processing instructions, so if I've got 8 areas to separate, I got 8 areas I can process. So it improves the performance of the processor and the efficiency. Intel became famous originally for their Pentiums. They actually had a more recent Pentium that came out, which is in my picture over here, called Bay Trail. It's not the older Pentium, it's actually more in this category, but it was specifically designed for efficiency. So there's some confusion there too, because that is a newer Pentium per se. They just use the old name, kind of like a car model. They got these car models they've discontinued. I was reading in one of the auto magazines just a month or so ago that they're coming out with some of the same models that they used in the past and just renaming them and rebranding them. One of Intel's major competitors is AMD. I don't usually focus much on these in the class here. An Apple system on a chip integrated processors. So there's other processors. I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware that Intel's not the only one, but I usually focus on Intel. The processor performance is determined by 2 major factors, the word size and the clock speed. The word size is the number of bits the processor can process at one time. So currently our systems are on 64-bit. There was a changeover period here recently from 32 to 64. So this is sometimes hard to understand exactly what's happening. The clock speed is measured in gigahertz. We took a look at that actually when we did the properties of a PC and Windows early this semester. How many operations can be performed in 1 second? So more processing is faster more gigahertz is faster processing speeds. However, if we look at this factor, I found a diagram where a guy's going 2 steps at a time. If it's 32-bit and it's really fast, he's running up the stairs 1 step at a time. But if it's 64-bit and really fast, he's running up the stairs 2 steps at a time. So it's like double the speed, or at least theoretically. So the 2 factors, as you can see, are combined. Now, walking up the stairs 2 steps at a time versus running 1 step at a time, you can see that you got some give and take there. So memory types. Question number 9, it says explain the acronyms ROM and RAM. Which one has your unsaved Word document? ROM stands for read-only memory, and RAM stands for random access memory. The one that you see here on the left is a ROM chip. The one on the right is a RAM card. And for those of you gurus, I'm sorry I don't upgrade these all the time. I get tired of doing the upgrade all the time. It's a little bit of an older look. Some of them are a little bit more streamlined nowadays. But a traditional RAM card for quite a long time had that green board color. And they still look very similar, but the color schemes are different, slightly different look. They get different names like DDR2 this one was, and you got DDR4, etc. So they're always advancing in technology as well. If you're new to computers, I did blow this up. This thing is not that big compared to that. It's just a bigger view on the screen. It's kind of a small chip actually. So taking a closer look at read-only memory, it's a permanent chip from the manufacturer. When you turn your computer on by pressing the on button, it runs a startup routine of hardwired instructions. So it accesses this ROM chip, the ROM or the flash. And what does that do? Well, it initializes your hardware. So it checks to see if your hardware is plugged in properly and working. It takes a look at your BIOS, the basic input-output system. That's the acronym for it, the first letter in each word, BIOS. And it loads the operating system to RAM. So if you got Windows 10, it goes out and finds the files from Windows 10, loads them into random access memory. So a little bit about ROM. With this class, we're a little bit more concerned with RAM, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, but a little bit more about the boot process here first. So if I did a visual here. I actually designed this thing myself to try to make sense of what we just saw in text. You turn a machine on from scratch. If you turn it on cold, like meaning that like when I came in today, this machine was off, and I run through the boot process, it's called a cold boot, which is actually answer to question 10. It says a blank is the initialization of a computer system from a powered down or off state, including the post, which stands for power on self-test, and the process of loading the operating system into RAM. So generically we call it booting or the boot process. But if we have a computer started from a powered down state, it's called a cold boot, and if you do a restart on it, it's called a warm boot. So once I hit that power button, generally, if you're a non-computer expert, you're not going to go into your BIOS. So it's just going to do this. It's going to activate the BIOS. It's going to run the power on self-test. It's going to check to see if your hardware is okay. If it's not, you're going to get a boot failure. If it's good, it's going to go out to find the files for your operating system, which right now is Windows 10 on the machines we have here at the college. It finds those files on your C drive, loads them into random access memory, which is a temporary storage space. It loads the kernel and initializes the system. In the desktop support class that I taught here for quite a while, 3 years I think running, I did it every semester for a while. We took a week to discuss this. You can dig so deep it's crazy. I got a guy that's a programmer right now that I know, and he took a class on processors. He had a 15-week class on just how processors work. So, excuse me, sounds like it could be a pretty dry class, but maybe interesting as well. For us, we just got to know a few things. Okay, so breaking this down a little further. So RAM, where that operating system is stored, holds data and instructions, such as your operating system loaded into it. It's temporary. In IT terms, they sometimes call that volatile, meaning it's unstable. So if I turn on my computer and the operating system loads up and we lose power, everything goes down and I got to start over again. That's what they mean by volatile. It's temporary. Same thing is true of like your Word document. You have a Word document you open up. You haven't saved it yet. It's going to be saved to primary storage.
So it's in RAM.
Correct. So question number 9, which one of these, ROM or RAM, has your unsaved Word document? It's RAM. I'm emphasizing that because in the fall, I had one of my students call me over after the quiz, and she's like, I wrote ROM down. Like, you wrote it down wrong. It's RAM. So RAM has your unsaved Word document. It's primary storage. Primary means first. So when you start a Word document, before you've saved it, remember if you power down, you have a power outage, it's not going to be saved. especially in the first 10 minutes before there's a special tool that actually Word has kick in. But generally, by default, in the first few minutes we lose power, we're going to lose the file. So we have to save it to secondary storage, which is a topic we're going to discuss later. This is also something that I actually am not going to quiz you on, but I like to give you some background information because you may wonder what a bus is. It's these lines that the bits are traveling on. So a data bus is a circuit on which data travels within the computer. That could be between the random access memory and the central processing unit. It could be between the RAM and the storage devices. If it's an expansion bus, it's a part of the data bus between the RAM and the peripherals. A USB is a bus, universal serial bus technology. So, when we see that, now maybe it'll make more sense, it's a way that data travels, and it's a special way that's been configured to be consistent on a number of computing devices. Input process, we've looked at both of those now. What about output? So the O, input process output. If we're talking about display devices, when you go to buy a monitor, a lot of them nowadays are LED, light emitting diode. So they're the newer screen technology on the market. Most of you guys kind of know about LED lighting now. Initially it was kind of like with Christmas lights, and then it's with your car. Now you got your what used to be your incandescent bulbs being replaced by LED. So you got a light emitting diode is what LED stands for. It gives you better energy savings. You can touch the bulb, like if I want to just grab the bulb and it's been burning for a while, it's still cool. It's not hot like an incandescent. So it saves energy. It also improves color quality on a monitor, clarity, and faster refresh rates. A monitor actually has to refresh at a super high speed. When we look at our monitor, the human eye can't detect it, but it's actually refreshing very quickly, so fast that our eye can't detect the refresh. Is the monitor technology LED, is it durable? A lot of times new technologies have viewing angle issues, like if you go to the side you can't see it as well. Sometimes they're costly. When you see any type of new technology, it doesn't matter whether it's this or like 10 years from now they come out with something else, always stop and think about it before you buy it. Like, it might be great, but has it been tested out? Maybe give it a year. I've seen people get real lucky, jump in first thing, and they have a great tool that never fails them, but I've also seen people get something new and it starts having problems. So think about that when you're buying. Liquid crystal display has been monitors that's been out for quite a while. They're reliable. They have a lot of the similar things that we see here, but not as efficient as an LED. And then this is just for background information. Probably nobody has a cathode ray tube anymore, but if you do, you should switch to one of the other ones because you're out of date. Even I, who sometimes get behind the times, have had an LCD since 2002. I had to pay quite a bit for it. I was actually one of those people. I mean, it had been out for a little while, so I trusted it, but it cost me a little bit because it was still kind of new on the market. Great eye saver to save your eyes versus the old one. You guys should really be blessed, or consider yourself blessed that you didn't have to deal with a CRT very much, because it's terrible. Like a lot of eye pain and strain. The image quality on a device is, we talk about it this way. If I look at this image right here, I chose this image because it's kind of like a real set of pixels. Pixels are tiny dots or squares on the screen. They're officially a square, but your human eye kind of sees them as a dot because they're so small. If you were to zoom in a little bit, until you zoom in far enough, and then they appear as squares. The term pixel stands for picture element. how do we display them? Through the RGB electron beams. So RGB is essentially like a computer code where if I put a series of numbers in parentheses here, red, green, and blue, I can display a certain color. The values that you can put in there are anywhere between 0 and 255, where 0 is nothing and 255 is the highest.
And when you say the highest, when it's like say 0, 255, 0, that would be a value of 0 red, 255 green, and 0 blue, which is a pure green.
Correct.
So the answer to number 11 is pure blue.
Correct. So on number 11 it says, what color would a pixel be if it had an RGB value of 00255? So this is actually a very minor bit of computer programming, which you guys are going to kind of start doing when we get into Excel. You're taking a coding structure and you're plugging a number into it. So you plug 0 in for red, so there's no red. You plug 0 in for green, and then 255 is the highest blue color, and you have pure blue. As an example, if I go out to Word, and let's say I'm going to make this large so you can see it. So I type the word color. It initially appears in the default black color. If I go to the font drop-down list here, I have a bunch of colors I can choose from. And if I want to dig deeper, there's an option for more colors right here towards the bottom, and I can click on that. And it comes in and gives me an option to choose a different color, and there's actually a comparison here. I kind of got pure black right now, but what if I wanted like one of these grays or something like this? It would actually compare it for me here. So let's say I chose like I'll make a drastic contrast with this yellow. The new color is going to be the yellow versus the current. However, if I want pure blue and I want to make sure it's pure blue, I can go to the custom color and I get the complete color spectrum here. The yellow color I clicked is actually right here in this yellow kind of gradient. Notice that the yellow had a 255 red, 255 green, so it's a combo of red and green. Blue is 0. There was no value there on that one that I clicked on.
If I'm not mistaken, if the blue was at 255 as well, it would be a white color.
Let's try it. Sure enough. Good man, it's full all color, and that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? The color spectrum, you brought this up, I haven't even talked about this in any class before with the depth of the color spectrum there. If you take a pure white color and you send it through a prism, it's going to break it into the colors of the spectrum. So conversely, going back the other way, you're going to get pure white, and you get full value of all the choices we have here. It's only split into 3 here, whereas the full color spectrum, I believe, is 7 colors.
There are 7 from a prism.
7 from a prism.
The 3 there are the 3 used in combinations of colors when it comes to technology.
When it comes to screen technology, and if it's printer technology, it's, what is it, magenta?
It's magenta, cyan,
and blue? No. Something else. I can't remember now. I usually have it memorized, but it's escaping me at the moment.
Magenta, cyan, and yellow.
Okay, yellow. Thank you. So, full color in all of them was white, but what if I do what we have on the lab sheet here, or on the study guide? I change the red to 0. I change the green to 0. And now I have a pure blue color, and if I click OK, it changes to blue here, and that is pure blue. On the quiz, I'm going to ask you one of the pure colors, so you know you're only going to have 3 possibilities. It's either red, green, or blue. I'm going to do either 0, 255, or 255, 0, or 255, 0. You just have to tell me whether it's red, green, or blue. So you have to know that R is in the first slot, G is in the second, and B is in the third slot. It's what they call the RGB value. Okay, taking a look at the rest of this quality here. Other terms to be aware of going forward in your life here. Resolution is the horizontal and vertical pixels on the screen. So if I have a 1280 by 1024 resolution, that means I have 1280 columns going this way, and then 1024 rows going this way. Notice that I put or 1600 by 900. This is widescreen. So widescreen is what most of us prefer nowadays. I know once I got a hand on widescreen, I'm like, I don't want to go back to those squishy monitors. These are a lot nicer. So you got an aspect ratio of 16:9 here with widescreen. There's a slight discrepancy there with the standard. It's 4:3 roughly. There's some type of technology going on there that I've never quite figured out completely. But anyways, things to be aware of. Besides monitors, we can have printers as output. An inkjet printer sprays ink through a nozzle. It's usually a low-cost printer to buy the printer, but they get you on the cartridges. And if you have one, maybe some of you guys know you can go sometimes and get them refilled for a little bit cheaper. So that's one way to save a few bucks. You can recycle them and save a few bucks. I had one I may get one again, but I had one for a while and I got tired of it, so I got a laser, and I got one on sale at a used sale, and I got it for 25 bucks, which is kind of crazy to say, but
usually when it comes to technology that's sold at that low price,
yeah,
you need to be very careful, because
yeah,
for all you know, it could be a lemon.
You could have got a boat anchor, as we call it, right?
Yep.
Did we skip over 10, or did I space out for a second?
Spaced out for a second. 10 is cold boot, when we talk about booting.
Yeah, my dad said that with technology, if it doesn't work, you can fill it with concrete and you can just use it to keep your boat steady.
Yep, exactly. It's a good point. Laser printers use the same technology as a photocopier. What that technology is, in case you're not sure how those things work, is there's a electronic photoconductor where a bunch of toner, which is like a black dust, comes down onto that component, the photoconductor. And this is amazing. So I've got my study guide here. All of the letters and stuff on here are placed in the exact spot with the exact, positioning as shown. And then once the fuser heats up, that's why it takes sometimes a little while when you first turn a laser printer on. The fuser heats up, it just basically burns it to the page and prints it. If it jams in the process, you guys may have seen that dust come off of there in the middle of the process, and it's kind of messy. The thing about lasers is they're usually fast. Now my laser for 25 bucks is kind of slow, because that was something I had to give and take, They measure the speed in pages per minute, so if you're going to buy a printer, you might want to compare the ppm. Now we talked about output, monitors and printers. Remember that a monitor, we talked about input, it can also be an input device if it's a touch screen. So it actually serves a dual purpose if it's touch screen, because we can tap it and input information, or we can view it and see output. The last aspect of hardware lecture here is the S, the storage. That Word document that was saved in temporarily in primary storage, or RAM, when I decide to do file save as and I store it, I'm storing it to what they call secondary or physical storage. Let's take a look at the traditional storage method here for a second, because it kind of helps make sense of this. We're going away from magnetic storage now. There's still some magnetic hard drives out there. You can still buy them. in a machine. It's usually a little cheaper because it's not a solid state drive, which is more modern. But how that worked was we have a storage medium, which is a magnetic disk, and essentially when it's formatted, it's divided into tracks and sectors. So I have these tracks going around in concentric rings, and then I have these lines that split things into chunks. And then if I take a particular track in one of those chunks, I have a selection of a sector. So every time you save a file on a magnetic disk, and it's also true on a solid state, it has to have a directory, or it's like when you go to your local library and they have everything categorized into a, used to be the Dewey Decimal System, now it's something else. I'm not into library science, you can tell. But anyways, it's some type of system that we can find the book. Same thing here. We have to be able to find the file. So a file system keeps track of all the stored file names and locations. The older version is called a file allocation table, or a FAT. It keeps track of physical file location, track of free space. If your file allocation table is damaged, even if the rest of your files are not, you lose everything. Things that you should know when you go out to the store to buy a computer. If you see HDD, it's one of the old-fashioned magnetic disks that we're talking about. It's a disk platter, hard disk drive. If it's an SSD, it's the newer one, the flash memory, solid-state drive. If it's an SSHD, it's a solid-state hybrid, meaning it's got some magnetic and some solid-state components. This is building up to question 11, by the way, into our look at a computer system that we're going to be buying. Bless you.
Thank you.
There's a storage process that takes place. Computer data that we talked about, ones and zeros, is represented by electronic signals traveling over those buses and so forth, or the binary system. Stored data, the signals are converted depending on the storage technology. A term, data representation, allows us to convert letters, sounds, images, and electronic symbols into electronic symbols, sorry. Here's your summarization of storage comparisons. Three main types of storage technologies for PCs are magnetic, optical, and solid state. A magnetic storage device is represented by the HDD. A old-fashioned floppy disk or a tape is a magnetic storage device. Optical storage, CDs, DVDs, and Blu-rays. Solid state, your SD cards, flash drives, etc. So the answer to question 11, you can see a USB flash drive is an example of solid state storage technology. A slide on each here, I'm going to kind of briefly go through. If it's a magnetic storage device, you have a surface that's magnetized or demagnetized. If it's not magnetized, it's a 0. If it's magnetized, it's a 1. It's permanent, but you can overwrite things so you can modify them. A read-write head, which does the magnetization, looks something like this. Actually writes the file or reads the file. One of the problems with these and why we're going away from them, and that's why I have it in red, they're not very durable. They're physically fragile. Heat can destroy them. If you set your cell phone on top of your HDD drive, you can wipe your drive or your cell phone. It could also be messed up potentially, but you could wipe the data on your drive.
Suddenly, that scene in the core when the hacker's putting his drives in the microwave makes a lot more sense.
The hacker putting his drives in the microwave?
To get rid of all the data.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. These drives can become fragmented. What that means is checkerboarded. So
And on Windows 10, we have a program to fix that called drive optimization.
yes, there's actually a couple of tools that we can use. The class that I taught here, the ITOS 1310 it is now, discusses that. I used to discuss it in this class. This thing is shot here. Let's say I've got a disk drive that's been formatted, and I start storing files. Like here's all the files that are stored at these locations. Can you see how after a long time it starts to become what they call checkerboarded? You can actually make your drive more efficient by using a tool, as you mentioned, Chris, to put everything into one spot again and then get a large chunk of disk space free, and the machine will actually operate faster. However, that type of situation is not really feasible with solid state drives. So I've kind of removed it from the course. Optical storage, how does it store things? Well, it stores it as microscopic light and dark spots on the disk surface. Pits and lands. If it's a pit, it's a 1. If it's a land, it's a 0. And this is where the term burn a CD, burn a DV, or burn a Blu-ray comes into place, because you're using laser lights to actually burn the pit. They're more durable than magnetic. They're used for data archiving. If you do take care of your disk, it will last 200 years if carefully stored, whereas a magnetic drive or tape stored carefully might only last you 15 to 20, 25 years. So you got a big difference in lifespan. So this is why when you go to buy movies and stuff, they store them on those. And then the last thing here, the solid state storage, is a non-volatile. So, hey guys, keep it down a little bit. The back there. Non-volatile, erasable, low power chip. It retains data without power. So it's always in a low power state, a solid state drive. So your USB flash drive you guys are using for class always has a low power state associated with it. It's durable through the temperature changes, vibrations, and magnetic fields that a magnetic disk does not. It's faster and quieter if it's your drive in your machine. So it's a nice thing to buy, and that's why people buy them. It works through data being organized in a microscopic grid of cells. Each grid cell has 2 transistors or gates. If the gate's open, it's a 1. If it's closed, it's a 0. So a lot of different ideas they've come up with to store data. The end result of this presentation on hardware, and this was funny because I actually upgraded this semester. I usually let this sit out here for a little while, and maybe a year, 2 years at the most, and then I get a new one. And the funny part was, I didn't get much of a better deal by getting a newer machine than I did 2 years ago on the one that I was buying. It actually gave up some things, but it actually enhanced some things. So the sample machine that I chose was actually on the Best Buy website a couple weeks ago. It was a Lenovo Yoga 730 2-in-1, 13.3-inch touchscreen laptop. It had an Intel Core i5 processor. Notice that it's 8th generation, so it's the Coffee Lake. It has a 256 gig drive, so that's 1/4 of a terabyte, because it's 1/4 of 1,000 gig, which would be a terabyte. It's got a solid state drive. Price is $649.99. Like I said, I didn't get much of a better deal for some things I gave up. When you go to a website such as Best Buy, you can get all the specs. If you scroll down to the bottom of the web page and look at the machine specs, there's a lot more specs than this, but I chose a few out of the list. Of the few I chose, the yellow ones are typically the most important things you ever look at least in the past. So what's your processor speed? And notice it says base now. This is something that's sort of new, because processors can have a base speed and then they can actually be enhanced. So the base speed on this is 1.6 gigahertz. It probably can be a little bit quicker than that. System memory, the random access memory that we talked about, is 8 gig. It's got a solid state drive, so it's got the newer drive. Hard drive size 256 gig. It's got Windows 10 Home Edition, which was a downgrade from the one that I had down here a couple years ago. I had full-blown Windows 10 Enterprise. Operating system is 64-bit, which is standard now. And then these other things are also important to look at. You know, what generation processor was it? Because the newer, most likely the better. It's got full HD widescreen LED touchscreen. It's 13.3 size. It's got integrated graphics. The last one that I had some discrete graphics capability. It's got a built-in webcam, which you're usually looking for. This is the upgrade that this one had versus the old one. It's got the USB-C Thunderbolt port, which is something the last one did not have, because that's one of the most modern things that people are demanding now. It's really lightweight at 2.62 pounds. It was actually lighter weight than the last one I had on here. Battery life's longer. They've been extending that. I think the last one I had was 8. Now I got 10.5 hours. There's ones that are even longer out there. It's got wireless AC networking, so it's got Wi-Fi, and it is a 2-in-1. So, if I'm looking at an ad, these are some of the most important things that I want to consider.
At any point, are you going to have these slides on Canvas? Because I was having a little bit of it.
These are going to be on Canvas when we're done with this lecture. So everything's going to be out there for you.
One more time?
They'll be out there for you. Usually I don't put them out until we're completely done with the lecture, and then you have them out there until you take the quiz, which is going to be Thursday. So, while we're on this slide, any final thoughts here on this machine that we're looking at as a potential purchase, now that we've had a background of what these things are? Okay, let's watch some videos to consider this then. Notice that we answered all the questions up to number 12. The remaining 4 questions are actually software questions, which I'll get to after these videos. The first video, number 1, is a Microsoft Surface Pro 6 versus the iPad Pro 2018. Question A and B, it says the blank comes with a fully equipped desktop experience with its operating system and processor and a built-in kickstand. B, the blank has a larger display, higher screen-to-body ratio, and amazing cameras. The critical question on this video is, the blank is designed from the standpoint of a traditional laptop device, while the blank is designed more like a tablet. I believe these answers are more towards the end of the video. We may have to put up with an ad or two.
There's no such thing as a perfect writer. This is why I use Grammarly to check my work.
If I'm putting commas in the wrong place.
What's up guys, this is Itcs here. So Microsoft released their flagship tablet, the Surface Pro 6, last month, while Apple's redesigned iPad Pro will be available starting November 7th. Although the iPad Pro comes in 2 sizes, 11 and 12.9 inches, I thought it would be best to compare the larger one and see how it stands against the Microsoft tablet. So let's get
This was last fall, by the way, when he said November. I believe, yeah.
The Surface Pro 6 comes in a single size with a 12.3-inch display and color choices of platinum and black, while the 12.9-inch iPad Pro comes in silver and space gray. The iPad Pro has a 2732 by 2048 pixel resolution with 264 pixels per inch, and the Surface Pro comes with a 2736 by 1824 pixel resolution with 267 ppi. The Surface Pro accommodates a higher screen resolution on a smaller display, which means that the visuals are a lot sharper and detailed on the Surface Pro in comparison to the 12.9-inch iPad. Here are the dimensions of both tablets. One of the biggest differences between the Surface Pro and the iPads are the weights. The iPad Pro weighs less. I believe it's the built-in kickstand on the Surface Pro 6 that's weighing it down. The iPad Pro comes with Apple's most advanced mobile operating system, the iOS 12, while you're getting a full desktop computer experience with Surface Pro's Windows 10 Home. The Surface Pro 6 can be configured to either Intel Core 8th generation i5 or i7 processor, and the iPad Pro comes with the A12X Bionic chip. Now let's talk about the rear camera. You get a 12 megapixel camera on the iPad Pro with dual flash, and it can record 4K videos. On the other hand, the Surface Pro 6 comes with an 8 megapixel rear camera that records in HD 1080p. The Surface Pro has a Skype HD 5 megapixel front-facing camera, while you're getting a 7 megapixel true depth camera on the iPad Pro. As you can see, the Surface Pro comes with a lot of connectors in comparison to the iPad Pros. But what surprises me the most here is that you're getting USB-C port on an iPad Pro, while the Surface Pro comes with a standard USB 3. The USB-C has its advantages, like being able to carry significant power to charge devices, being able to transfer at a speed 2 times faster than USB 3, and being able to output high-resolution displays. Both tablets come with authentication with facial recognition in forms of Face ID on iPad and Windows Hello Face on the Surface Pro. The iPad Pro's battery could last up to 10 hours with normal use, while you're getting 13.5 hours of battery life on the Surface Pro 6. Now that's pretty impressive. So the starting price of the 12.9-inch iPad Pro is $999, and increases depending on your choice of storage and connectivity. On the other hand, the Surface Pro 6 starts at a slightly cheaper price of $899, and starts to increase with higher storage, memory, and configured processor of your choice. Both tablets do have separately sold keyboards and styluses as well, and I have included their prices here. So the Surface Pro 6 has a better display, fully equipped desktop experience with its operating system and processor, additional ports, an SD card slot, a built-in kickstand, lower price tag, and a better battery life. While the iPad Pro has a larger display with a higher screen-to-body ratio, amazing cameras for a tablet, comes with a built-in USB-C port, and has one of the fastest mobile processors. So who wins? I'll let you be the judge. Let me know which one you would choose in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to my channel for more videos. Until next time guys, take care.
So in letter A there, which one has the fully equipped desktop experience?
The Surface Pro 6.
Correct. While on B, it'd be the other one, the iPad Pro 2018 has a larger display, higher screen-to-body ratio, and amazing cameras. So the gist of this, he sort of alluded to it there at the end, but when we look at the question at the end, which one's designed from the standpoint of a traditional laptop device?
The Surface.
The Surface. Microsoft is coming from their end of it, which is larger computing, while the iPad Pro is designed more like a tablet. Now they are continuing to get closer and closer, but they still have the emphasis of their strong points. So that's one of the biggest things I think at this point here in 2019 is, even though things are merging, realizing what type of device that you're trying to buy or what you want to do with it. Okay, video number 2. The Lenovo 720 2-in-1 review. This particular video is it's 2019 now. I think this might have been like fall of 17, so this one is a little over a year old. But there's some major points that he makes in here. The Yoga 720 has an Intel Core i7 Blink processor. B, how much of RAM is the optional max, otherwise it comes with so much RAM, so forth. I'm going to try to pause this video because this is a lot of detailed information as we hit these points here.
To keep things fresh this Valentine's Day, don't just buy something, do something on Groupon.
After my review of the Razer Blade that I just did, which you can click the link to check out, and Lenovo's launch of their new Yoga 720 that they just announced here at Mobile World Congress, I think it's safe to say that it is a good time for gamers and video editors for that matter. The Lenovo Yoga 720 has some serious specs. The Yoga 720 has an Intel Core i7 Kaby Lake processor. That's the latest series of i7s.
Okay, so the answer to that one is that 7th generation, and he said it was Kaby Lake, K-A-B-Y Lake, because it's a year older, as opposed to the newer one, which is Coffee Lake.
Also, it doesn't say this on the spec list, but I had someone confirm at the booth it is a quad-core processor, not a dual-core, at least in the top model 15-inch version. Paired with that, it has an NVIDIA GTX 1050 graphics card. 16 gigs of RAM is the optional max you can put it to, otherwise it comes with 8 gig.
So question B, 16 GB. You'd put 16 GB, that's capital G, capital B, of RAM is the optional max. Otherwise it comes with 8 GB or 8 gigabytes of RAM.
There is a 4K optional touchscreen, or you could get the 1080p.
Question C, there is a 4K, that's just the number 4 and the letter K, optional touch screen. Or you can get the 1080p. The 4K is a much higher definition, which is supposedly exceeding almost the efficiency of the human eye.
It also has an optional 1 terabyte SSD as the top level for the storage.
Question D, the top level storage is a 1 TB. That's 1 capital T, capital B SSD. 1 terabyte.
It has JBL speakers, a fingerprint scanner, which is also optional, and a Thunderbolt 3 USB-C port, along with other USB ports, like 2 USB 3 ports and a USB 3.1 port. But that Thunderbolt port, that's important. If you did see my Razer Blade review, you'll know why. And that's because Windows has this feature built into it that allows you to run external graphics cards with some type of external graphics card housing. I'll explain more of all of that actually in a forthcoming video. But suffice it to say, you can have bigger, better, badder desktop graphics cards plugged in via that Thunderbolt connection, and Windows can utilize the graphics card as if it was in the machine itself, which means a lot more power whenever you want to dock it to one of these things. Now, even without the external GPU.
So, question E says, why does he feel the Thunderbolt 3 USB-C port is important?
It allows him to add a more powerful graphics processor for better graphics.
Correct. I like the summary there you did, though. External graphics capabilities is what I would put. 3 words. External graphics capabilities.
With that GPU that's in there and the processors and that RAM, we're talking serious power for a gaming or even editing machine. And all of this is packed into a clean-looking aluminum body that's only 19 millimeters thick. Not only that, but it folds back 360 degrees, hence the 2-in-1 moniker, and can work with an optional pen, making it both powerful and pretty versatile. The device runs Windows 10, and with the top spec model, the one that I'm kind of referring to, you get about 8 hours of battery life, apparently. If you go down to the lower res screen, you can get about 9. And all of this weighs 4.4 pounds, which is not light by any means, but is pretty standard and expected for something that has this type of graphics card, processor, etc. Now, I'd love to do a full review if Lenovo would send me one. Send me one. Even just looking at the spec sheet, though, it's still pretty impressive. And it just kind of makes me realize like how powerful laptops are getting. Lately, it's pretty crazy. I mean, it's pretty exciting times for anybody that pushes pixels, either for work or for play. And there you go, a quick rundown of the new Lenovo Yoga 720. Something that excited me when I was wandering around Mobile World Congress. Let me know what you guys think of the Yoga itself, of this video, in the comments below. Always like hearing from you guys. And if you did like this video, please thumbs up and share it. It's greatly appreciated. If you want more videos like this, please click the link to be taken to the channel. It's my face. It's floating around here somewhere. If you click on that and you like what you see there, please subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.
The last thing there that I just kind of let run is question F. To get between
8 and 9 hours.
8 and 9 hours of battery life, depending on the screen resolution. Why does it matter?
Because the screen resolution causes the processors to take more power.
And we have the refresh rates going on, so there's two factors there. Exactly. So you get a little bit longer battery life, you said, if you go down to the lower res, but you might want the higher res.
That's why when it comes to a lot of gaming PCs, there's the option for power saver, optimal performance, and optimal battery life. Where it lowers the amount of frames per second for battery life, and it increases them for optimal game quality.
Very true. So the summary question here too, something that wasn't really seriously mentioned, but what advantage does a solid state drive have over an HDD? Faster, quieter, more reliable is what I would say. Faster, quieter, more reliable. Question number 3. Or video number 3 rather. Chromebooks typically, he's going to mention it here right at the beginning, they're typically got a different stigma about them than a regular laptop device. However, this thing's changing how we look at Chromebooks. So it's kind of a cool video. This Chromebook was, I believe, just released in December. Question A, there are 2 blank ports, both of which are enabled for charging. Prices start at $5.99 for something, whereas stretching up to $7.49 for the different model with 128, which is double the storage. As for the something nature of Chrome OS, there's a whole generation of students who grew up on Chromebooks. I'll try to pause this again too.
Chromebook. Normally I think either low-cost, low-capability devices for school kids or super premium, super portable Pixel books for Google employees. I never think of gigantic desktop replacements. But Lenovo's Yoga Chromebook is just that. I just went hands-on with this unit here at IFA 2018 in Berlin, and well, because it can be hard to get a sense of scale from a video, let me give you a little comparison. This is the Yoga Chromebook, alongside the biggest laptop Apple offers, the MacBook Pro 15-inch. And that's not a small laptop. Part of the reason this is such a massive machine is that 15.6-inch touchscreen display, which is available in either Full HD or 4K resolutions. This isn't a light machine either, tipping the scales at 4.2 pounds, thanks to an all-aluminum casing. The space is used well, though. For ports, you've got a single USB-A and headphone jack, as well as 2 USB-C ports, both of which are enabled for charging.
So on question A there, he mentioned there's 2 USB-C ports, and that's USB-C, all capital letters. USB-C. Both of which are enabled for charging, which is another important aspect of a USB-C connector.
There's also a micro SD card slot, though on a machine this size, I wouldn't have been surprised to find full-size SD support. I don't mean to keep harping on the size of the thing, but it's just a little absurd to see Chrome OS on such a beast. When I asked Lenovo about that contradiction, it told me that it sees this first and foremost as a media machine for people who want a big display for things like Netflix and YouTube. That's part of the reason it's got the reversible hinge, and it's why the battery probably isn't as big as you'd expect given its size and weight. The thing is, this isn't the kind of laptop you're going to want to cart around town much, so Lenovo expects customers to keep it plugged in more often than not. As for the somewhat limited nature of Chrome OS, well, as I think I pointed out in my Pixelbook review, there's a whole generation of students now who grew up on Chromebooks. They're comfortable with the software, and some of them want to run it on more capable or more specialized hardware. And you know what? I get that. If you're one of those folks, or you just want to experience this gargantuan indulgence, you will at least pay less than you would for a Pixelbook. Prices start at $599 for the full HD version with 64 gigs of onboard storage, stretching up to $749 for the 4K model with 128. Lenovo says the Yoga Chromebook, this big bundle of joy, should be ready in time for the holidays. This video is brought to you by Tunnel Bear. True story. It's
C was, as for the somewhat limited nature of Chrome OS. I had those out of order there, by the way, I think, or did I? Prices start at $599
For full HD.
for full HD and $749 for the 4K model, correct? 4K, of course, is like one of the high-end models. They're of course constantly advancing stuff. And then lastly, the summary here. At the beginning of the video, he says that you usually think of school kids or Google employees using a Chromebook, because Chrome OS is essentially from Google. It's a Linux-based operating system that they customized into the Google Chromebooks, which is not a full-blown operating system. So it's not what they call full-featured. So that's why he said in C that they're limited. They have a limited nature generally. But this one is redefining it because it's larger. It has the potential to be full-featured. It actually is something he mentioned that it didn't have a lot of battery life, so it's actually meant to be used around the house. So it's kind of just totally different, totally different type machine that's coming out. So I like to kind of bring out some of these new ideas that are out in the market. Video 4, USB-C 3.1 that we were looking at in the last two videos to an HDMI adapter. You can buy adapters. This one's maybe not the greatest video, but it's kind of nice to know that this is out there and it wasn't too bad. After the reviewer here enables the dual display, he suggests that the settings can be adjusted to either blank or blank the monitor.
All across America, people are making amazing discoveries with MyHeritage.com.
We have no idea who we're related.
What's happening, Panda Nation? Peter Mark Andy here. Hey, I just bought this. It's from, I think it's called Kimwood. I may be wrong about that. It's Power Your Life accessory, and it's an adapter that I want to try on my MacBook. And I want to show it to you here, so you'll figure out what it is right away. But pick this up on Amazon. Looks like it comes with a little book here. I'm not exactly sure what that's for. Oh, are you quite happy? You can share it. There it is, Kimwood. So it is Kimwood. It's a little happy face. I'm going to leave it up there. And here is the adapter. So what you can see here is it looks like a pretty typical computer adapter, and it is. It's nice. It actually seems like almost like an Apple product. We have like a bead-blasted aluminum housing on the bottom there, and then also on the USB-C end right here. So this plugs into USB-C port on my MacBook 12-inch, and as you may know, Apple is kind of a little bit like Porsche. When they do, their products, their high-end products, like Porsche, for the Spider model, what they do is they take out the door handles, the power windows, the air conditioning, the radio, and then they charge you more for it. And that's what Apple does. So they remove all the different ports that come on standard laptops, and they charge you more. I'm not complaining. It's just how it is. And so what they only have is this USB-C port. But if you want to hook up your computer to a monitor or a projector or something like that, if you use it particularly for work, you're going to need something like this. And as you can see, USB-C to HDMI here. And that's because it's really, really difficult to project things if you don't have this. Now, you could, AirPlay your MacBook to an Apple TV or something like that, but most of the time, I'm not carrying around. My buddy Colin Bello actually carries an Apple TV with him when he goes to project, so that he AirPlays from his iPad to the Apple TV. Seems like a lot of hardware. Something like this is a lot cheaper. It's something you can put in your travel bag, and it takes up a lot less space. It's not going to take any time to set up. But now the thing is, will this work? Will this actually work? Did I spend a small amount of money on an adapter that's not going to project to an external monitor? Let's give it a try. So a live test here. I've got this external monitor here. I've got my MacBook loaded up here, and I have the Kimwood receiver plugged into the HDMI cable that's plugged into the monitor. So always a little nervous about live tests here, so if we go ahead and plug it in, just kind of curious if it'll require me to do anything. Oh, look at that. That's kind of dramatic because I wasn't sure if I was going to do anything. And it looks like I have an extended monitor now. So kind of popped up on its own. I'm actually not sure. Oh, there it is. It's assuming the computer's over there. So I'm sure in some settings here, I can adjust these to kind of either duplicate or extend the monitor. But as you can see there, I didn't do anything other than plugging it into the MacBook, and that's pretty awesome. So really happy with that. That gives me some freedom to display things for work or for pleasure, share some movies, just extend my workspace, use my MacBook on a much bigger monitor. So I think a lot of value, usability, and luxury coming out of a very, very small device that you can purchase anywhere. I'll put a link to it in the description. But until then, Peter Von Panda, out! What?
So, if I hold down my Windows key and I tap the P key on the keyboard, the Windows key is the one kind of next to the control key in the lower left corner. It'll actually bring up the ability to project. And the two things he said in the end of the video there was you could either duplicate or extend. By default, his was extending. By default, mine was duplicating when I tried it in the fall. So you can see here on this PC, it's defaulted to duplicate, which means it's going to be the exact replica of the monitor, but you can also extend it so that you have a separate monitor, as he showed there, where it's actually can be dragged to a separate window. The last video, installing RAM. Before you touch anything inside your system, do something by touching an unpainted metal surface. B, avoid touching the blank on the module. And once the module's in the socket, press down on it until something happens. Let's watch this last one.
Adding memory is one of the easiest ways to make your computer faster, more responsive, and better at multitasking. Here's how to do it. Start out by clearing your install space, then gathering everything you need. You will need your laptop computer, crucial laptop memory, a screwdriver, and your system's owner's manual. Shut your system down. Then remove the power cable. Now remove the battery. If you're not sure how to do this, consult your owner's manual, which will show you how to do it. If your laptop doesn't have a removable battery, you don't need to do this. Now let's make sure there isn't any residual electricity in your system. So hold the power button for 5 seconds to get rid of it. Now open your laptop. For instructions specific to your system, consult your owner's manual, which will tell you where the memory slots are at. Before touching anything inside your system, ground yourself by touching an unpainted metal surface. One touch and you're good. There are usually lots of grounding options to choose from. Now take out the existing memory modules. Pull the side clips away from the module, which will allow you to remove it. Grab your new crucial modules by the side edges to avoid touching the gold pins. Align the notch on the module with the ridge in the slot. Then insert the module at a 45-degree angle. Once the module's in the socket, press down on it until it clicks into place. Once all your modules are in, put everything back together. It's time to enjoy a faster computer.
Three major things there. You should do what?
You should ground yourself. You don't want to get a shock from that thing.
You don't want to also send a shock in there because you can fry it. You can fry your machine with a static electricity. And so then you're like, you've been there? Ooh.
First time I tried to My dad works at BT Energy. He already gave me the message.
B, avoid touching
The gold pin.
the gold pins that you saw. And then C, press down on it until it
Clicks into place.
clicks. You'll hear a clicking sound. Now, we saw a laptop, but you can also do it for a desktop. It's all the same type of stuff. The laptop kind of snapped up at an angle, but a desktop is just going to go straight down into the slot. Why would you add memory? Well, we're going to see here when I talk about software, short software lecture. If you have an older machine and you've exhausted everything else, you've cleaned the system out, you've made sure you don't have any viruses, nothing seems to be speeding it up, you might need to install RAM to increase its speed. And you can save money that way instead of going out and buying a new machine. Okay, so on the study guide, we've looked at all the videos now. By the way, every semester, just about, I have 1 or 2 students that are surprised that I have video questions on the quiz. They are on there. So all the stuff that we talked about is potentially on the quiz. Yeah, I had somebody that missed pretty much all the video questions last fall, and she was like, I didn't think you were going to have those on there, so I didn't study them. Make sure you study both sides of the study guide. We need to answer 13, 14, 15, and 16 through a brief software presentation that I have here. Okay, so one of the premises of an introductory course is everybody's got to know this. There's 2 basic types of software. System software, which coordinates the activities of hardware, helps to analyze, configure, optimize, and maintain the computer, and allows you, who is also known as the user, to interface to that computer. Question 13 says, what is the difference between system software and application software? This would be something that system software does. An example of system software is the picture you see there, Windows 10. Your operating system is system software. Kind of the concept here too is there's got to be some type of tool to get, again, from what the computer understands to what you understand, or from what you understand to what the computer understands. So it's your interface to the machine. However, it's not generally, again, unless we're a guru, that's all we want to do is work with system software for our life or our job. It's usually not what most people want to use a computer for. Most people want to do this. They want to interface with application software to solve specific problems and tasks. And of course, an example, now I put Office 2016 down there as the whole suite. Any one of those is an example of application software, including Word, which we've been using this unit, Excel, etc. Any games that you play are application software. Your browsers that you browse the web with are application software. All right. Does everybody have those down? Not yet? Specifically for the quiz, make sure that you understand that Word is application software. Microsoft Word. It's a word processor, and it's what we're doing this unit, so I've kind of focused on that for the quiz. As an instructor, it's kind of funny because this is like a big thing. It's very simple, but it's a big thing with colleges that everybody knows this. If I skip this, I'm usually in trouble by, somebody found out. I got to tell you guys the difference between these two software types. Okay.
Well, one of the other important things about application software is it cannot run by itself. It needs system software in order to be operable.
Exactly, and that's what we're going to lead into here. I've got a slide. You're ahead of me a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to move on here. So system software, such as your operating system, is the master controller of all computer activities, and it also includes utility programs, which are housekeeping tasks for your computer. This graphic is fantastic to kind of show in a graphical sense what you're talking about. You have your hardware, which we've talked about today, CPU, disks, your mouse, printer, whatever. Surrounding that is your system software, your operating system and utilities, which allow the interface to the application software, such as the games, word processors, and browsers. So yes, utility programs. Now, one of those utility programs might be, if you had the hard disk drive, the defragmenter that we were talking about. Or it might be something that helps you manage your disks or partition them. Or it might be your anti-malware software on your machine. All of those things are housekeeping tasks for your computer. When you see the term platform, it refers to the microprocessor plus the operating system. So we were talking about this actually a few weeks ago when we talked about Mac and PC compatibility for your use of the software applications in this class, Word, Excel, and so forth. So Mac and PC compatibility is an issue. It might be a minor issue or it might be a major issue. It depends on what year it is and how much Apple and Microsoft are getting along, and so forth. It seems to be, and at least in my lifetime, it seems to fluctuate like waves back and forth. The Apple computer is the Mac platform, and most people are aware of that. If you're not, something we need to know a little bit and think about. A lot of people don't know that the original International Business Machines, or IBM computer, is the Windows, or also known as the PC platform. Essentially, Bill Gates, who's the CEO of Microsoft, was pretty good at borrowing ideas from IBM and making millions and billions.
Well, he is pretty close now to the richest man in the world ever since Bezos got the split.
Yeah, I've kind of noticed he's way up there, but I don't keep track of the exact figures.
Bezos
But
lost more than half of his funds in a divorce.
oh, okay. Yes, I did see that. Now that you mention that. Keeping up on the news, are ya?
When it's everywhere, you can't help but
Yeah.
pay attention.
Operating system interfaces come in command line or GUI. GUI stands for Graphical User Interface, GUI. In Windows 10, you're using icons, windows, menus, and toolbars, and this is what's known as a GUI, or a Graphical User Interface, where you just click on it, or even if you have a touch screen, you touch it. Okay, so it's very interactive. DOS is not so interactive, at least from a standpoint of the general user. If you're a back end, behind the scenes computer techie, and you just love that kind of stuff, then maybe you feel the same way. Debating on whether I want to do this or not. Usually what I like to do here is step outside and give you guys an example. I can do I can go to a directory command and I can actually list something that looks like this, and I can see my pictures, downloads, documents, all that stuff that I can see in the graphical user interface, and it's the same thing. You're just looking at it in a different fashion. Because of time, I want to kind of continue on and make sure we're utilizing our time well. I'm probably going to skip that, but just know that I can go into DOS. I am going to step out and just do, not actually go through the whole routine, but if I go down here and I just put in CMD for command prompt, and I launch it, that is a DOS command prompt, and then I can do something such as in users SC238, I could do a dir, and I can see my directory, and there's my, I'll keep it short here, I got my documents, downloads, favorites, and then I could also navigate through the GUI to get to the same spot. So it's just kind of interesting to know if you're going into computer technology, such as networking, you are going to have to use some DOS commands and Linux commands on a system. Popular operating systems for desktops then are Windows and Macs, you know, OS, that you guys pretty much know that. Handhelds, you have Android and you have your iOS, two popular ones. Servers, Windows has a server tool, and then you have Linux and Unix, which are run on servers. Your college data here at Macomb most likely is run on a Unix server, actually, meaning your class schedule and so forth. You can, if you need more than one operating system on a machine, you can multi-boot your machine, or you can use a virtual machine, which is a pretend machine on your machine. Beyond the scope of this class, but just interesting to know. Utility programs. We talked about these. You got your anti-malware, the file compression where we had a zipped folder. That is a utility. Spam and pop-up guards. The disk utilities we talked about. Also backing up things. There's a backup utility. Transferring files and search. We've used search in the class. So all those are considered utility programs under the category of system software. There's also a utility called System Restore, which allows you to generate restore points prior to software installation. If something goes wrong with your installation, you can roll back to the setting. A lot of people aren't aware of this. If you get some malware installed on your machine, you might be able to eradicate it by this, but a lot of times the malware will disable this, which is nasty of them. Again, I'm just kind of giving you guys a brief overview. Your computer performance can be monitored through Windows Task Manager, which we looked at in Windows, Control-Shift-Escape. To keep your computer running smoothly, one of the biggest things that causes a slowdown is you have malware, and we're going to talk about that in Unit 3. You may have to run a malware scan. You may have to remove unnecessary files that have accumulated. If you have a hard disk drive, you might have to do the defragmentation we mentioned. And if none of that works, it might be time to add the random access memory cards that we saw in the video. Or buy a new machine if none of that works.
But only use that as a last resort.
Buying a new machine or buying the RAM?
Buying a new machine.
Yeah, because it's expensive. So yes, last resort is what I would usually do. I'm kind of conservative though. Some people are like, it's time for a new car, new machine, whatever.
I'm pretty conservative too. The only reason I got a new laptop is because the old one, the screen got busted by something.
Yeah, occasionally it's nice to get something new. You know, my wife just wanted to buy couches this Christmas, and it had been 19 years since we bought couches, so I was like, I can't argue with that. Application software, a brief journey through some details on that. It's designed to carry out a particular task. As you mentioned, Chris, it's often operating system dependent. Word, Excel are examples, PowerPoint. This is something important that I want to summarize from the first unit here. File extensions. We created a plain text document in Notepad. A .txt extension is a Notepad document. We did not look at rich text format, but it's the next level up in complexity. I generally consider it as far as a word processor. There is a application built into Windows 10 called WordPad, and it's associated with that. Then next up in complexity in word processing files is a doc file. That's the older Word file that we've worked with. And then you finally have the modern version of Word. We also saved a file in PDF, portable document format. We also talked about an executable, I believe it was I can't remember now with all the snow days and stuff. We talked about what it was last class period, last Tuesday. Going through the course, we're going to look at Excel, Access, and PowerPoint. You don't necessarily have to be aware of those right now, but that's what's coming up. For the quiz, understand these bold-faced file extensions here, what an executable is. If you want to open a file with something other than what it defaults to, you can right-click on the file in File Explorer and choose Open With, and try to open it with a different program. PDF files are often something you might want to do with because you might have it defaulting to open in a browser, whereas you want to open it in Adobe Acrobat Reader, for instance. So you're not stuck with the defaults. It's something to be aware of with a computer system. Okay, this is, we're getting to questions 14, 15, and 16 here finally. Software installations can be managed through the control panel. It's the Programs and Features applet in Windows 10. So question 14 is, the answer is Programs and Features, and I do want to demonstrate that. If I go to the search down here, the Cortana, and I just put in Control Panel, that's the easiest way to get to it anymore in Windows 10. It comes up right here. I can click on it. Just a quick peek at the control panel for this introductory course here. Over here on the upper right, when you get into control panel and you have never changed it in Windows 10, it's going to look like this. It's going to be in what they call category view. If you like category view, you can use that. You can go to programs, as you can see here, uninstall a program. I'm old-fashioned because I grew up on this next thing. If I click the drop-down arrow on category, I can say large icons. And then everything is alphabetized. All these applets, they call them. Programs and Features is right here, alphabetized. And I can click there. And it's going to give me a list of every application installed on this machine. And it says at the top to uninstall or change a program, select it from the list and then click uninstall, change, or repair. So I would just click it and then I could do one of those things with it. If I want to completely uninstall it, I just click on it and I click uninstall. This will completely and safely remove the program from your machine. If you go through any other method, like deleting icons or whatever, you're leaving pieces out there unattended to and you're making a mess of your machine. So that's important to know about on your personal device. As we can see here from the remainder of this slide, when you install software, you can encounter conflicts. So before you install new software or upgrade, is it compatible with other existing applications on your computer? A big thing with this is, if you get a new release of a browser, and they're constantly coming out with them, there's a chance it could interfere with your distance learning software like Canvas. Automatic updates nowadays seem to just force stuff down on us. We do have control over that. It's kind of an in-depth discussion though. Question number 15, it says, what is meant by the term beta version? Beta version means pre-release software. So software products are released to certain individuals prior to coming out to the general public. For instance, our IT staff gets a beta version of releases that they have to install on our machines at the campus prior to the general public.
or how beta testers get access to games before they are released to the public and determine where the bugs are so that they can be fixed for the public release.
That's a really good point. That's also true of like the IT staff and stuff. They're essentially getting free workers because they don't have to pay somebody to go through all that, and they're never going to have just their staff fix everything. But if they push it out to a larger population and more people are looking at it, they're not only getting free work, but they're fixing more problems for the release. So it's kind of tricky, right? Good point. You added some good points there, Chris. Thank you. Products have to be activated. By the way, did you click on Word? Was it activated on that one, or? It was not activated yesterday. There was an issue with that. It's not activated?
And the other issue is it's stuck in yesterday. Because on the date it says February 4th, 2019.
That one? I'm going to put a trouble ticket in on that. I was actually going to do it last night and I forgot about it. So I'll get it in hopefully this afternoon or tomorrow. So products have to be activated, you guys. They don't have to be registered. They have to be activated. Okay, so if you install software and you don't activate it, it will expire on you and it won't function.
It's a trial software if you don't activate it.
And sometimes the trial is almost nothing. It won't even do anything. All your menus are grayed out. It's just useless. Is your software buggy? So if you need help, you can go to these sources. You can use the vendor support center for the software you're using. You can read documentation online, check online forums, check and install for fixes that may be available for the software. A lot of times other people are encountering it. Guys, stick with me here. It's getting kind of noisy here. It's kind of hard for me to finish this up. Copyrights and licensing. Law protects software products. You have the right to use the software. If you have an individual license, it's a few computers. Now it depends. We say a few. It could be 5, 10. It depends on the licensing agreement. It could be 2. A site license allows a place like the college here to agree to connect multiple computers to a piece of software. And that can come in either a certain quantity of computers or they can just get it for the entire organization. And they just pay a fee and they agree with the fee. Legality of software. There's something called shareware, which is available at a cheaper price. And as you mentioned there, Chris, you get a trial version with some of that. If you don't pay after a set number of days, it will disable the software. You can also get freeware. This is downloadable software online. It's free. You have to be careful what sites you go to, but a lot of times there's some freeware out there that's very useful. However, as question number 16 mentions, freeware is often intended for private individual use. So what that means is, if I'm at home and I want to use a piece of freeware, cool, I can do it. Even if maybe I'm on my work machine, but I'm the only one using it, cool. I can't go out and go, all right, I want that software in this whole classroom here at Macomb, because I'm actually in violation of freeware agreements. Even though it's free, you can't use it in a corporate environment, generally. Just to be aware of that. So if you get into like a job and you're like, oh, I can put this on this whole room because it's free, you're actually probably in violation. Even better than freeware, you can get freeware that also allows you to modify the code and customize it to your needs, which is called open source software. We've been talking about software installed locally on your machine, but of course, the cloud has all sorts of stuff out there. Google Drive, My IT Lab, TurboTax, you name it, it's out in the cloud now. We talked about activation. If I want to check to see if Windows is activated, if I go out here to this PC and I right-click on it and I say Properties, like we did earlier this semester, we were looking at the RAM and the processor and all that. Here's your activation for Windows. Windows is activated. And of course, every other software product needs an activation as well. At the bottom of this study guide, there's 3 little things here. And I do have a link here. I'm going to try clicking on it. Sometimes it's down. Yeah, it looks like it's going to go for us today. Question 1 says portableapps.com. So that's this first link that I have. Apache OpenOffice is compatible with Microsoft. Is that true or false? If I go to Portable Apps, and this actually links you out to the real website. I've got it on the Apps tab here, and I scroll down, look at all the stuff that's out here that's free. Development, education, games, graphics. I'm just trying to make you guys aware of what's out there that's most likely clean. Internet, music and video. Aha, here's an Office grouping. Here's Apache OpenOffice Portable Word Processor Spreadsheet Presentations with Microsoft compatibility. So answer 1 is true. Number 2, the .zip format is supported by 7-zip. True or false?
I've used 7-zip. It is.
It is. I'm going to click on it here. This is the second item, 7-zip. So this is a free compression tool that you can download that's not a Microsoft product, but it says supported formats, 7Z, XZ, BZip, GZip, TAR, ZIP. Aha, there it is. .zip is compatible with it, so that's also true.
Now if you had RAR format, then it would have been a bit of a trick question because it can be
Unpacking only.
but that's all.
Man, Chris, you know a lot of stuff, man. That's
I
like
grew up on Windows.
Yeah. Number 3, Dell drivers specific to your machine can be easily accessed by entering a something tag on the website. Well, a driver is a tool. Let's say your sound isn't working on your machine. You might need a driver for your machine so that you can hear the sound. You can usually go get it for your particular device from your vendor. So if it's Dell, it's Dell. If it's HP, it's HP. I'm going to click on Dell here. The first box says enter a Dell service tag is the answer to number 3. Where do you find your service tag? It's usually on the top of your box. There's also a command you can put in DOS to retrieve it, but I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. Usually there's a sticker on the top of your box or back of your box. Okay, so on Thursday, we're going to have a 30-question quiz over just this study guide. Hardware and software study guide.
As well as the slides that you said you would put on Canvas.
This is all the stuff we went over, the software, the hardware presentation, and this study guide are all going to be activated on Canvas. So you'll have everything. This is, this is going to be what we're looking at. Now, I think we'd be pretty tight, unfortunately. I was hoping I'd be done by a little bit earlier. I do want to answer the 20 questions on the Word study guide. I think it'd be too tight today to do that, though. So what we're going to do is the quiz is going to take place Thursday. And then after the quiz, I'll answer the 20 questions on the Word study guide. And I also want to give you guys a couple of quick tips on the grader for Chapter 3 and 4 because they're kind of tricky. And then after that, it's just time to work on some homework assignments that day. The test for Word is going to be on Tuesday next week, so a week from today. It's going to be over the Windows study guide and the Word study guide, which we will answer the 20 questions for on Thursday. And then you'll have to create a document. So we're kind of starting to come down to the end here a little bit to this unit. Any questions on that then?
Good luck with today's lesson.